I'm Sam Temple.
I'm Logan Ledman.
But that's not important right now!
John L. Scofield was born in 1811.
He lived in New York and went to the University of Pennsylvania. He became a doctor's assistant after graduating, despite the fact that he wanted to be a minister and a farmer. It was simply meant to be his first job after college, a placeholder until he could follow his true passion.
On account of the fact that he knew literally anything about medicine, he became a doctor in Racine County, Wisconsin. His dream was still to become a minister and a farmer rather than a doctor, which reminds me to reiterate that he was not a real doctor.
When people came in with the flu or a bad cough, his solution was to tell them to take their shirt off so he could dump ice water on them. According to W. Pye, quote, Dr. Scofield's cheerful, jolly face and spirit of optimism did more for his patients than his medicine, end quote. Despite this, he was known to travel day and night in any Midwestern weather condition to help his patients. He may not have wanted to be a doctor, and he wasn't one, but people thought he was, and many needed help. John L. Scofield always helped in whatever way he could.
In 1849, he got roped into being the medical expert for a group of would-be millionaires heading to California for the gold rush. In California, he found himself in the possession of enough gold for a single ring. After surviving a bout of debilitating illness, he made his way back to Wisconsin.
After his travels to California, the enticement of a different place out west led him to start planning to leave. By 1856, he was ready to head for Minnesota, where he would eventually settle in Northfield. However, he was the only doctor in Racine County, and he was desperately needed. John tried to escape town, but he was followed by a large group of people all the way to Northfield.
For a brief amount of time, John was able to live his dream of being a farmer minister. His secret past took long enough to catch up with him that he was able to get off one sermon, and incidentally, it makes him the first person to give a Methodist sermon in Northfield. However, the word spread that he had a limited amount of medical knowledge.
At that time, there were pretty much no doctors anywhere in Minnesota. The town forced John to become Dr. Scofield again, reluctantly, a position he would stay in for the rest of his life after his sons were born.
Once again, John was remarkable for his readiness to help those who needed it. His friendly countenance became well known in the infantile Northfield community. The fake Dr. Scofield was prominent enough in the area that he served in the state legislature for 2 years on the library committee.
By the time the Civil War broke out, John's son, Charles, was well known as a sharpshooter who could shoot a match from a person's hand. The local recruiter wanted Charles to enlist, but John was dead set against the 19-year-old going off to war.
Ignoring their father's wishes, Charles and his 15-year-old brother George escaped in the middle of the night, hiked and canoed to Fort Snelling, and enlisted as musicians.
By 1864, George and Charles had been sending frequent letters to their parents. Suddenly, George's letters stopped coming. John's wife, Betsy Ann, had a waking nightmare. She woke up in the middle of the night and saw a ghostly vision of her son George standing at the foot of her bed. When the nightmare ceased, she discussed it with John.
John was terrified. He rode to Ulysses S. Grant's camp in Kentucky, meeting the general personally. As tea was being served, Charles entered the tent. He reported that last he heard, George was down with a sickness in Patica. Immediately after lunch, John rode to the medical camp in Patica. John discovered that George had died several weeks prior. Evidently, he drank poisoned milk from a Confederate sympathizer.
Ulysses S. Grant promptly drafted John into service as his chief physician and surgeon. While mourning his son, he became accustomed to cutting off so many limbs that he just moved his operating table to avoid the mounting pile of bloody appendages. His demeanor likely helped him stay grounded in this demanding and gruesome job, as he saved countless lives that may otherwise have been taken by infection.
After the war, as more doctors arrived in Northfield, they made fun of John for being a fake doctor, despite his critical service in the Civil War. One day he purchased a fake medical diploma to stop people from teasing him.
Scofield lived in Northfield for the rest of his life. As a limping old man, he liked to tell people that his cane was for keeping dogs away. He ate using only a knife instead of a fork, and consumed never less than 2 or 3 cups of coffee in one sitting. Although he remained eclectic, he was beloved and well respected.
John L. Scofield lived a long and happy life. He lived out the rest of his days in Northfield with his wife, Betsy Ann, and was remembered fondly by his grandchildren. He passed away on his 89th birthday, peacefully. He was remembered as the comforting country doctor, one of the few remedial forces to temper the ills of early life here. John and his family have a prominent plot at the Northfield Cemetery.
Even after the fake manufacturer he got the fake diploma from was shut down for being fake, John kept his piece of parchment proudly displayed and laughed at it frequently. That's why, when he was buried in 1892, the doctor, surgeon, and physician, who originally wanted to be none of these things, had a tombstone proclaiming him John L. Scofield, M.D. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on 1855.